Thank you. As a business futurist, which is what my business card says, I'm really interested in two specific things. The first is how the world of work in particular is changing. What are the forces that are shaping the world of work? How will the world of work look and feel different in the future? And the second is leadership. What do we as people need to do in order to be successful in that world and in order to bring that world forward? And it's not just for the CEOs and senior execs. We all are leaders in one way or another. If we have influence over others or even just influence over ourselves, we are leading. And as our team has been looking at these issues of the future and the changing world and what we need to do as people in that world, over the last few years, a topic has just been emerging as becoming more and more and more important. And that's this issue of diversity. Now you say, seriously, Graeme, have you been awake? I mean, diversity has been a topic that's been around for a long time. Why are you saying it's emerging? And the reason is that I think it's time for us to look at diversity differently and to move away from some, especially here in South Africa, some of the ways in which we have been talking about and thinking about diversity. If you're still worried about the compliance issues of diversity, if you're still trying to get your BEE status right, you're well behind the curve. You probably actually need a bit of a clap. Because that stuff should have been sorted a long time ago. I realize the codes change and all the rest, but that's not where we are at the moment. But a lot of people, sadly, are still have this kind of checklist version of diversity thinking. Have we got all the right people in all the right places? Tick, 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 now we're done. That's not good enough, clearly. We know that. But it moves on to being people talking about, well, it's the right thing to do. I mean, it's a good thing for us to do. And I think that's a problem as well. It's not just about compliance. It's not just about doing something that's good and right, although you do need to comply, and it is good and right. But I think that it's time for us to see diversity as a strategic business an organizational imperative, to be at the heart of something that can bring your business a strategic advantage. Not in some kind of mercenary way, but to genuinely get the benefits of what a rainbow nation is supposed to be, what a rainbow organization could be. And so this presentation and the research that runs behind it, it's taken our team 2 years to look at this from all around the world. It's not a specifically South African-focused view of this issue. It's informed by a global research and a global investigation into this issue. There are some remarkable pieces of research that are showing us that if we want to be successful, if we want to be successful as organizations, if we want to be successful as teams, if we want to be successful as a nation, we need to look at this issue of diversity in a different way. I'm not going to go into detail this morning about some of the benefits of this, but just by way of summary for you, there are some remarkable insights around this issue of diversity. For example, if you're seated in a boardroom and we're having a conversation here, and the facilitator or the MC or the chairperson says, right, can I just have your opinions? Here's the issue, can we just have all of your opinions? And let's say that you've got a really different and interesting opinion, but you're going to be the last to speak. So you give your opinion, and then you give your opinion, it's the same opinion. You give your opinion, it's the same. You give your opinion, it's still the same. You give your opinion, it's still the same. What's the likelihood that you are going to say, well, I have a different view? Okay? Now, you might think that people are very confident and comfortable to share their different views, except all of you work in businesses where you know that's not how it works. The research tells us you need 3 people with different views before any one of them will be prepared to share it. That's a thought, isn't it? that in any given team, you need to make sure that there are at least 3 different opinions so that we get to hear that last brilliant idea, which is the idea that we probably needed in the first place, because all the rest of you are just sucking up to me. And so building diversity into the way your team works produces innovation. It allows people the freedom to speak. It develops resilience. We know this from nature. Organisms where all of the DNA and all of the systems are exactly identical, if a sickness comes into the system, it spreads through the whole system and the system dies very quickly. Resilience comes when you've got a lot of different DNA in the mix, and that biodiversity exists. So you can look at this in any which way you like, and whether it's from nature or the study of teams, whether it's from looking at natural systems or looking at organizations, we discover there are significant benefits for creating and nurturing diversity in a system. And that's why we need to learn how to do this in a much more effective way than we've done before. It also, and this is important, stops you making very stupid mistakes. And there are quite a few examples. This is probably the most recent and my favorite example, is the H&M monkey t-shirt mistake. Okay? So what happens, right? H&M in the UK choose the most racist photographer they can find and get the most racist marketing team together. And then they choose the most racist catalog artist that they... No, of course not. I don't think a single person in this system was genuinely or individually racist. This was just a photographer who got a gig. They bring a whole bunch of cute kids in. They've got a whole bunch of clothes. They put the clothes on the kids. They stand them. They take the photographs. They look at the photographs. That's a nice one. They then send it up to the catalog. The catalog puts it nicely. Oh, we can put some colors around it and we can get this thing looking nicely. Goes to the printer. The printer makes sure the color balance is right. It all looks good. Make sure that the black kid is not underexposed and the white kid overexposed in terms of color mixes and so on. I've got 3 daughters, and they've all got different looks and feels to them. I've got my oldest daughter's light skin with dark hair, then I've got a dark skin with blonde hair, and then we adopted a Zulu daughter. So I know what photographs and different skin tones are like. Nobody ever looks good in a full family photograph. So that's pretty well done, right? And then they go to printing and they print it off and they send the catalogs out and they bang it up on the website. And not a single person in the mix is a racist. But not a single person in the mix is black. Because even one black person who saw that come past them would have said, hang on. We've put the black kid in a monkey t-shirt. Now, for some of you in the room, you don't even know what the problem is. For some of you, that's not a problem. But you're only some of you. And there are another some for whom that's a real problem. A real problem. Like so problematic, we're going to come and trash your stores problematic. Now, I'm not saying that was the right thing for EFF to do, but I am saying that there is a part of me that understands. And all you needed was one black person in the mix. By the way, if you want to go and Google H&M management pictures, you will discover it's very white. I'm not saying racist, I'm just saying white. In other words, it's not diverse. When you get diversity wrong, it can go quite badly wrong. It can also go wrong for individuals. Here's a very famous photograph. This photograph is focused on the man that's highlighted there. Do you see him there? Where can I get my mouse to work here? There we go. Okay. Do you see what he's not doing? Okay. This is a Nazi salute in 1936, and that man's name is August, I think, is German Landmesser. And he decided not to give the salute. Nobody would have noticed. Nobody did notice on the day. The photograph took about 3 days to process. Do you know how they found him? They weren't looking for people who weren't saluting. Do you know how they found him? Did you see the other thing in the photograph? Right next to him is the only woman. And they were looking for women, because women weren't allowed to attend these rallies. And both the woman and August, the woman's name we don't know, but August we do. He was sent to a concentration camp and eventually died. Because when you stand out from the crowd, you take a chance, you take a risk. We know this. Those of you who are trying to get diversity right in your organizations will know this to be true. It's not easy. In fact, it can be quite messy. And in some cases, even a little dangerous. But we know it's worth it, and so we need to learn how to do it. And that's why we've focused on this issue of learning how to lead difference differently, and learning the skills required and the organizational systems and structures required in order to do this thing properly. So the presentation or workshop, depending on how long you can give us to do it, looks at 5 key areas. What we need to do is understand the context. What's changed in the world that's moved us beyond just compliance and a social good to making diversity a business strategic imperative? What's changing in the world that will make this a real competitive advantage for your organization or just for your team inside your organization? Then we need to learn how we see things. How is it that each of us sees the world, and what are the lenses that we use? It's kind of like profiling ourselves and profiling other people so that we make sense of diversity. Once we've understood our lenses, we can then look at what we see through those lenses, what judgments we make, and what things we miss, what becomes invisible to us, and why, and how we can see it. And then finally, we have to change our patterns. We have to change the way in which we talk, the way in which we engage, the way in which we work together, and find ways to build real community. So this morning, just let me dip into 1 or 2 areas of this to show you what I mean. So in that second area of how we see the world and understanding the various lenses that we use to make sense of the world, we look at a variety of different things. For many people, the issue of diversity comes down to just gender and culture. Internationally, it's mainly gender. South Africa, it's obviously more culture and race, but it's a lot more than that. In fact, it's all the ways in which we engage the world, because the reality is that we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. And so we need to understand these lenses and recognize and acknowledge and own the lenses through which we see the world. And there are many of them. It's everything from your culture and your gender, but it's also your religion and your education and your socioeconomic background. It's your physicality, if you have disabilities or not. These are the ways in which we frame our experience of the world around us. And knowing our own lenses and being able to see other people's lenses is absolutely critical to this issue of leading difference differently. Now, let me give you a nice example of why this is so important. And choose one which maybe is a little bit unexpected rather than the normal thing. And that's kind of what we try and do with this presentation, is we don't want to just do the same old. You know, when somebody says, well, now we have the diversity speaker, it's like, oh, really? You know, we're not coming with a lecture and a wagging finger and all the rest. We want to do this in a different way. And also, by the way, have a little bit of fun with it. So let me do this morning by way of just a short snippet from a fantastic TED video by a guy called Derek Silver. Have a look at this for language.
So imagine you're standing on a street anywhere in America, and a Japanese man comes up to you and says, excuse me, what is the name of this block? And you say, I'm sorry, well, this is Oak Street, that's Elm Street. This is 26th, that's 27th. He says, okay, but what is the name of that block? You say, well, blocks don't have names. Streets have names. Blocks are just the unnamed spaces in between streets. He leaves a little confused and disappointed. So now imagine you're standing on a street anywhere in Japan. You turn to a person next to you and say, excuse me, what is the name of this street? And they say, oh, well, that's block 17 and this is block 16. And you say, okay, but what is the name of this street? And they say, well, streets don't have names. Blocks have names. Just look at Google Maps here. There's block 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. All of these blocks have names, and the streets are just the unnamed spaces in between the blocks. And you say, okay, then how do you know your home address? I said, well, easy. This is District 8. There's block 17, house number 1. You say, okay, but walking around the neighborhood, I noticed that the house numbers don't go in order. He said, of course they do. They go in the order in which they were built. The first house ever built on a block is house number 1. The second house ever built is house number 2. Third is house number 3. It's easy. It's obvious.
So now you take a white suburban kid, very similar to Alan's story, government school, grows up in the suburbs. But I go to my first township, which is not dissimilar to the Japanese experience. Because yes, the roads do technically have names, but that's not how townships work. How do I find my way around? In a Japanese suburb, how do you find the house? You're going to block 18, house number 22. How do I find a house in a suburb? Huh? Yeah, but you've got to then walk around the whole block to find it because it's not in the order you expect it to be if you come from the suburbs. Okay, that's a nice suburban answer. Just look. Work it out for yourself. So please, somebody who grew up in the townships, tell me what's the best way to find it. Ask somebody. There's always somebody on the street and they know. So we speak to them. That's a strange concept from somebody from the suburbs. Actually speak to somebody. Ask them, and they will tell you because they know. Do you see how simple a thing like language is? Literally the way we name our streets divides, but now can unite if we understand. Does that make sense of what I mean by lenses? So if we get the lenses right, and then we understand that sometimes our lenses, our initial reaction is to judge. How stupid is the Japanese system? There's a judgment in that, isn't there? And then what have we missed in the invisible because we didn't know to even look? Once we've done that work, we get to the point of saying, well, how do we now make sense of this in a way that can build real community between us? And this requires us to change our patterns of thinking, to change our sense-making patterns. Just let me give you two simple examples as we rethink the way we lead differently. The first is how we talk about difference and what difference actually looks like in our organizations. Many people think that what we're looking for when we try and create diversity in organizations is variety, the checkbox mindset. This is like having a zoo. You walk around the zoo and you tick off, yes, we have a giraffe, elephant, fantastic. Need to get a polar bear in here sometime soon. And what we're looking for is variety. We want enough of everything so that people who walk through it say, good job, this is a great zoo. The problem is you've got to keep all of these animals in cages. You've got to keep them separate from each other, otherwise they will literally kill each other. It needs a lot of energy in from the outside. You've got to bring food in. You've got to clean up all the poo. Sounds like your company, doesn't it? Yeah. This is our problem. We've created zoos, whereas what we should be doing is creating ecosystems, biodiverse ecosystems, where everything works together. Yes, the lion eats the antelope, but when the lion dies and becomes fertilizer in the ground and the grass grows green and lush over the lion's grave, the antelope eats the grass. And I promise you, I never burst into the Circle of Life song, although that's what I feel like doing at this stage. What is your business trying to do? Build a zoo or grow an ecosystem? Are you aiming to have variety, or do you genuinely want to get the benefits of diversity? Does that make sense as a picture? A zoo or the wild? There's another picture I can give you, and with this I close this morning. We start, when we work on this journey of diversity, we start by recognizing that we are different from each other. And that is important. It is important for us to know, how do the Zulus do funerals? How do the Xhosas do weddings? How do the Afrikaners do sport? Rugby, I mean, that's easy. But we've got to take the next step. The next step in that journey is that we are different for each other. When people say, I don't see color anymore, I say, what's wrong with you? If you don't see somebody as Zulu, if you don't see somebody as a woman, you don't see them. You've got to see them, but then realize that they can be different for you. This is essentially what white privilege can be. Those people who moan and say, well, I'm white and I'm not privileged. So you've misunderstood the concept. White privilege is not something you have to be guilty for or say sorry for. It's something to say, I've got a gift. And I want to use that for other people. I want to bring my diversity to the team. I want to be the guy at H&M who says, black children in monkey t-shirts is a problem. I've brought my diversity to the team as a benefit. And only when we've gone through that can we end up with being different together. The promise of the Rainbow Nation. You don't become a Rainbow Nation by saying it. You have to work towards it by moving from to for to together. So we've got to find ways to have this diversity conversation in a different way, to frame it differently. I honestly believe that this is the most significant element of future leadership success. We're seeing it coming. I think it's going to become more and more important over the next few years. And if your businesses want to develop their leaders, if you want to develop your organizations to be more effective and to get a strategic advantage, then we need to learn how to lead difference differently. Thank you.
Well done, Graeme. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Questions or thoughts, ladies and gentlemen? We'll bring you a microphone if you need them. Where are we? Vaughan's got the microphone this time round. You're all very quiet this morning. It worries me a little. Question over there, ma'am.
Question.
I'm interested to know, in a situation where, let's say it's a small business and you are not planning on employing any new people anytime soon, are there other ways to diversify your workplace or your marketplace?
That's a fantastic question because, and this is the point I was trying to make, that we often think of diversity in very narrow terms. So in South Africa, we're very focused, for obvious reasons, on cultural or racial diversity. Internationally, when you say the word, it's often the gender issue. But if I go back, can you just put my slides back up, guys? Just let me flick back a few slides there. If I go back to that list, you'll see that all of these aspects are important. So one of the simplest ways you can engage with diversity is look at personality diversity. You've got introverts, you've got extroverts. There's other types of personality profiles, but those are just the two obvious places to start. And your introverts and your extroverts will engage in very different ways. So let's go back to my team over here. If we're having a conversation, all of the extroverts will throw in their 2 pennies worth, and the introverts will actually be quite happy to just sit back and say nothing. So you can do very, very simple things. One of my favorite things to do is we give everybody 3 Smarties. Come in your meeting, there's 3 Smarties sitting on the table, and every time you contribute to the meeting, you have to eat a Smartie. And when your Smarties are finished, no more contribution. And you'll be surprised that just a simple technique like that then opens up space for the introverts to say, a little bit of space for me here. Okay, here's my contribution. And somebody who might never have spoken in a meeting before suddenly gives you this pearl of wisdom because you've created a bit of space for them. So this is why, and thanks for the question, because it helps me reinforce the point I'm trying to make, that if we focus just on the compliance or the BEE issues of diversity, we miss a whole range of diversities that exist in any team. And it's about harnessing those and doing more than that. It's about actually celebrating them and making sure you bring them out. A lot of people are scared of diversity because they don't quite know how to handle it. They don't want to unleash it. I say exactly the opposite. We want to bring it out so that we can be different for each other and then different together.
You touch on something quite important, though, as well, Graeme, because you're one of South Africa's most successful speakers ever. And you work around the globe relentlessly. This subject is a little touchy.
Yeah.
Are people going to be frightened of booking you for it?
Because
you're dealing with some plain truths.
Yeah. No, I hope not. And that's part of the reason why I haven't over the years been particularly focused on sort of politics and that level of engagement. I very much focus on business and organizations. But I have felt that maybe it's the time now to step up and talk about some of the touchy issues in our country. And it's been amazing over the last few weeks and months to see that I think the mindset that is behind the research our team has done actually does make a difference. And the fact that I was literally quoted by the President in Parliament this week is maybe a sign that there is a way to talk about these issues that doesn't have to be touchy. That can, because Julius Malema also reposted that, and did Mmusi Maimane. So the three major leaders of the political parties have all quoted the same post.
Stunning. So it's time to have these conversations.
I think so. And I think there's a way of having them that isn't touchy and doesn't touch on the nerves or get people nervous, but actually unleashes what I think was the promise of the Rainbow Nation.
With your team of people at Tomorrow Today, you research relentlessly. I mean, the stuff that you put into your presentations is always personalized to suit every audience, and I understand that as well. This is really the issue of the day, isn't it, that we need to deal with? And that's why this is your world premiere today of your diversity program.
We honestly have seen this coming. And when you look at Trump in America or Brexit, a lot of that is on the fear of difference.
Yes.
The fear of immigration, the age difference being the big issue behind Brexit. So this is not a specifically South African issue. And the approach that we bring is not a specifically South African solution. This will help you step up globally as well. And that's why we use global examples and bring that global aspect to it.
And just as a final thought, you touched on not just the presentation, but workshopping this, which is the area that I'm going to go into in a few moments' time. You're also seeing this trend for more diversity in conferences and events.
Absolutely. I'm really sick of going to conferences now where you've got 5 white men sitting up on the stage pontificating about things. And if I'm asked to speak on a panel discussion and so on, I have now made a principled decision that I will ask who are the other panelists. And if white males are the majority, then I will decline. Because this is important. We need to hear more voices. We need the diversity of views to come to the front. And there are ways that you can build that into how you put a conference together, how you put a panel together, and of course, just in your everyday work at business.
Brilliant. Graeme Codrington, thank you very, very much indeed.